What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? We are back for Outside the Box Week 5, a look at the Week 5 tournaments on DraftKings. And after a really brutal Week 3 for us, probably our worst week yet on this show in Week 3, came back in a big way. Week 4 went really well for us. Had a lot of winners who watched the show. And as a result, I think largely as a result of the success last week, it was a good reminder that we should have some sort of merch for the show. So the design team at Fantasy Points, Scott, how did this come together so quickly? These t-shirts, these outside the box t-shirts.
Well, we got like 3 people who won 10K plus, and they're like, thanks. All I do is just listen to your show every week, and I won a lot of money. So thank you for that. Some dude was in like Norway or something, and he was this paid for my trip. Thanks so much. And I'm like, yeah, well, where's your freaking Fantasy Points avatar or your OTB avatar? And they're like, I didn't know you guys did that. And I'm like, all right, well, if you change it right now, I'll give you a free outside the box shirt. And oh my God, look at this shirt. This is the greatest shirt of all time. I almost said that in a Trump voice. This is the best.
It's great. Yeah,
the best shirt, luxurious quality. It's so sexy. You go to a bar, all the pretty ladies are going to flock to you. You don't have to learn what a cold open is or what negging is. They just, oh my God, he watches outside the box. He must be rich. But real talk, there's no markup on this. We either take a loss on all of our merch or break even. We just think it's cool that people, want to give us free advertising. The quality is really good. So if you guys want to buy that, you can buy it. If you don't, just win a tourney with 10K plus and post a screenshot on Twitter. You'll get a free shirt. I'll reach out to you. I'll get your address and shirt size and all that stuff. And where can the folks at home find the official logo or avatar?
You're asking me where they can find it?
Yeah.
You tell me, Scott.
All right, one of us will tweet it out today, and you guys can.
I think you tweeted it last week, but yeah, we can do another tweet with it. Maybe that should be a channel in the Discord. I don't know. That's I don't know the best place to post the avatar, but yeah, worth having that out there. Very, very cool shirt. Cool to see this come together so quickly. You can get it in black, navy, or charcoal.
Miles Dutton says he's wearing his Assman shirt.
I was going to say can't really compete with the Assman shirt though. Like, I mean,
it is insane how many of those we sold. It literally, I went insane. It's awesome.
Yeah,
I can't get one. My wife would not let me get one. So.
Well, then
she's like,
other people need to.
I'm like, I'm never gonna wear it out. I like wear it to bed. And she's like, just the off chance that you wear that out, I do not want to be associated with you.
That's really funny. All right, so yeah, check out you can go find the shirt or just win. When you say 10,000, is that a minimum of $10,000? Contest of 10,000 players? What do you mean?
You win. You take down a contest, winning or not take it. You get 10K in prizes from one contest.
Okay, and then you will win an outside the box t-shirt, have that shipped to you. Do you need to have the outside the box avatar to qualify on DraftKings?
Yeah.
Okay, so you use the outside the box
fantasy points. But if you do fantasy points, you'll get whatever shirt you want. If you do OTB, you get this shirt.
Sweet. All right. Love that. Those parameters. I cut myself short on the introduction. This is, I just assume everybody who's watching knows what the show is, but I'll give the little spiel anyway. This is outside the box. I'm here with Scott Barrett, who is just the GOAT for NFL data, dives deeper than anybody should ever dive into the NFL data to find little nuggets that you might not find elsewhere, find the best plays for the DFS slate. Scott comes from a fantasy football background where he is just awesome at providing advice for fantasy football, does an article every single week where he breaks down the slate in depth and like historically, maybe the best article out there in terms of finding gems to play in your DFS lineup. Just a fantastic article. I come from a DFS background, so I don't know the NFL nearly as well as Scott does. I just have a long history I've been playing DFS for more than a decade. The majority of my success has come in NFL DFS. So we decided to team up, do this weekly DFS show together. And it's been a lot of fun. It's gone pretty well for us. We still have yet to draft a team that wins $1 million on the show, but that is of course our goal.
It's coming.
We'll go position by position, kind of looking at the chalk to start.
Did we get another 1% score last week? I know we came close.
We came close. We didn't finish in the top 1%. Yeah, I'm fairly certain of that. I would have known if we did. We were briefly in the afternoon window. We were in that top 1%, but we dropped out. I think all three of the lineups we built may have cashed last week. I know at least two of them did. Yeah, it was a good week for us last week. We didn't quite get to the top 1% though. Yeah. Position by position, we'll take a look at the chalk. We'll find some of the best plays that are not chalk, and then at the end we will build some lineups together. Wanted to give a quick shout out to, we're talking about all the people that were winning last week. Here's just a few of the screenshots we got, and I think I actually left out I may have left out a 5-figure win, so apologies if somebody tweeted at us with 5 figures. That's left out. But Pierce won $10,000, 9th place in the Millie Maker. That is pretty insane. Nice win there for Pierce. We had B. Heyman using that. He actually switched out the avatar after tweeting at us. Scott sent him the avatar, switched it in there. So got 4th place for $10,000.
Yeah, I just want to say, so Saber Sim, if you post a winning screenshot, they give you a Rolex. But like, who wants that when you can get an outside the box tee?
To be fair, that's only if you win $1 million. You need to win $1 million with the Rolex. Okay. Maybe we can send them 2 t-shirts if they win $1 million with the avatar. I don't know. Maybe something better.
A mug as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Mind of JC. This is a site, I forget what it is, but this is like in Australia, I want to say, a different type of DFS site, but using our advice, did really well. So really cool to see several winners.
We saw crush on this site. We get these every single week. Like even in a week, I'm like, kind of a down week for me. The whatever site this is, I have no idea what it is. They're crushing.
Yeah. And we had several others, and I can't show them all. So just showing a few of the screenshots from last week, people doing really well. But we'll get into this site. But first, let's take a look at this is the winning Millie Maker lineup for the large field Millie last week. Stefan 828 won with, and this was a stack that we talked about. Justin Fields to George Pickens was just a single stack. Could have had Pat Freiermuth in there. I think would have worked well in this lineup as well. But loved that stack. He had James Conner and Chuba Hubbard, 2 of the better plays on the week. Mike Evans, I didn't realize that Mike Evans made it into this lineup. Put up 23 fantasy points. Jaden Reed was another kind of sleeper play. Ended up at 8% ownership, so wasn't like insanely unowned, but with Jordan Love back, that was a play that
I wanted to go all in on Reed. We were all over the Pickens Field stack. I think I wrote up every single one of these guys except for Taysom Hill. Yeah, definitely did not write up Taysom Hill.
I mean, 2 rushing TDs on 24 rushing yards. He actually got knocked out of the game in like the second quarter too. Taysom Hill could have just absolutely destroyed the slate. Maybe we wouldn't have had as good of a week because that was a play that I was not on last week at all.
Well, that's what killed me. I just for whatever reason didn't have any of the right tight ends last week.
Yeah, so that was not ideal, but
it was a good week, profited. But yeah, all my tight ends sucked.
Nico Collins, of course, was chalky. We liked him. Everybody liked Nico Collins. And then the Falcons. We shouted out the Falcons on the show. I forget what the context was because we don't talk a lot about defenses. But
you brought them up, and I'm like, oh man, that's such a good call. Carr stinks under pressure. They have a really good D line. Olave's hurt. Taysom's hurt. They're missing their star center. Their other guards banged up. Blah blah. And then it just like wiped from my mind. And that night, I had a dream that like I needed to play the right defense and I knew what it was, but I couldn't remember what it was. And I just never figured it out in the dream. And I woke up and I told Discord about this and I'm like, they're like, you got to figure out what this dream defense was that went nuclear. I ended up playing Vikings, which like did pretty well, but yeah. And then as soon as Falcons scored that first touchdown, I'm like, it was the Falcons D.
Yeah, should have been the Falcons D. I mean, a lot of people at least took that advice. We were getting tweeted at during the slate last week how good of a call that was, and me too. I barely remember that we like somebody tweeted at us, and I was like, oh yeah, we did talk about the Falcons, and I had some of them, but didn't like jam them. I just don't give that much thought to defenses in general. But that one worked out. All right, enough about last week. Let's move on and talk about this week. And of course, starting as usual at the quarterback position, no real chalk. Brock Purdy at 13% ownership now. He was under 10% last I looked. So the ownership coming up a little bit on Brock Purdy. Jaden Daniels there at 11%. Geno Smith, Jordan Love, the only others at double-digit ownership. I mean, do you need to poke holes? I mean, this isn't even really chalky. Just double-digit, just barely for all 4 of these guys Any of these that you're really leaning into, any that you think are bad at double-digit ownership?
Yeah, I don't know how accurate it's going to be. So I'm going to say something. I'm going to say I just want to go all in on 2 quarterbacks on 100% of my lineups. And like, I don't know if that's stupid or that's bad process. It makes me feel like maybe I'm just being lazy, or maybe it's really just that straightforward, especially if looking at this ownership projections. Be sure to check tomorrow morning. Darren is neck deep in college football stuff right now, but yeah, I kind of want to just go all in on Jordan Love and Joe Flacco doubles. It really feels that straightforward and simple to me, but I don't know. Last time I said that didn't work out great for us. And like, obviously Purdy's a great play. Jaden's a great play. There's some other off the wall plays I like, but I don't know. That's just what I want to do, Neil.
Jordan Love and Joe Flacco. Those are your calls this week. I mean,
yeah. And then just game over, make it easy on myself,
I love both of those calls. Those are definitely 2 quarterbacks that I am on. I think Joe Flacco, we were talking about before the show, I don't think this 2% ownership holds. It's probably going to end up.
No, we got to update. We just got the news 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. So the ownership here is a little bit outdated. Hard to argue with those plays. I do like Brock Purdy a bit. I liked him. I mean, I guess I liked him better when he was coming in a little bit lower on. Now he's up to 13% chalkiest play on the slate. Not as much of a stand I want to take, but I do kind of like the Brock Purdy play somewhat. We like all of his receivers, obviously. Nice matchup with the Arizona defense. So I think I like that one a little bit better than you do.
No, I just mean like Purdy's probably my cash quarterback this week. Stack him up with Jordan Mason. It increases your ceiling, but highest owned quarterback. I don't know. Those other 2 just stand out so much more to me.
Okay. Do you want to talk about those 2 then? So let's talk about Jordan Love and Joe Flacco to start, because they are your favorites, and then I can just throw out some other names and you can tell me what you think about them. But since those 2 are your clear favorites, let's just start there.
Yeah. So Flacco is the best matchup of the week. Jacksonville's giving up 8.9 schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, by far the most of any defense. Last year, he averaged 24.4 DraftKings fantasy points per game. That was behind only Josh Allen. Jonathan Taylor's out. Indianapolis has like one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL. Even like Adonai Mitchell, who's barely playing, like he's the number 1 ascot right now. What the issue was, they had the lowest catchable targets per game rank of any offense. Like they were worse than Malik Willis's Packers. That's really how bad Anthony Richardson was. Like you look at his stats, I broke it down by like depth of target, where it's behind the line of scrimmage. He ranked bottom 3 in accurate throw rate, 0 to 10 yards, bottom 3, 10 to 20 yards, bottom 3, 20 to 30 yards, bottom 3, and then 30 plus, yeah, like 100% accurate throw rate. And so we've seen Flacco, like even dating back to the Jets days, where he, with Zach Wilson, they would throw the ball 20 times per game. And then with Flacco, they would have like 400 passing yard games. He would throw like 55 times. And that's really one of the strengths of this offense, especially without Jonathan Taylor. And so, he's priced, Michael Pittman's priced, Josh Downs is priced, like Anthony Richardson starting, and Anthony Richardson is doubtful. So just like insane value. I really like the upside. We'll talk about Downs, Pittman, BTJ on the bring back a little bit later, I imagine. And then Jordan Love, what did he do last week? He threw 5,000 times, 54 passes. What has he done over his last 10 games? 23.0 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his last 10 starts. That would have ranked behind only Josh Allen last year. Now he gets maybe the league's worst pass defense. Rams are giving up a league high fantasy points per dropback allowed, adjusted net yards per attempt allowed. They're pretty bad on the ground. They're also like bottom 10 on the ground. So, that's a potential concern, but and then maybe you remove Romeo Doubs and like he plays a key part as the sacrificial X, Matt Harmon would say. I don't really know about all that. I just, it really, quarterback who's grossly mispriced, who's just been flat out awesome with the best play caller in football his last 10 games. And then no Watson, no Dubs really condenses things, makes them easier to stack. And it just seems so easy to me. I think both of these guys are going to wind up being really, really chalky, but it just seems so straightforward.
It does seem pretty straightforward, and yeah, with the couple starting receivers out, suddenly we get Dontavian Wicks is just 5,000 and looks like a really great play at 5,000. Bo Melton suddenly in play, so
yeah, we got to talk about Bo.
Much cheaper. Yeah, and we'll talk about that when we get to receivers, obviously. But yeah, Jordan Love. I mean, you're naming two of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate, so hard to argue with anything you're saying. I spread out my ownership more at quarterback, and this isn't a slate where I'm going to only play two quarterbacks.
Don't do that. But I'm going to do that.
yeah. Well, you also play fewer lineups than I do typically. It's totally fine to do. It's just a matter of risk tolerance and how convicted you are in your favorite plays. I really like some other quarterbacks on this slate too. So that's the reason that I'm not just going to lean into two. I will have more than those two. But let's talk about some of my favorites. We already talked a little bit about Brock Purdy. I think he's kind of obvious. Maybe don't need to get too deep into it. Just the Niners have a great offense against a bad defense. Purdy's only 6,200.
He's also just so underrated. The dude is so good.
Yep.
And he should not be 6,200. Like I've been saying this for, I don't know. I feel like since like week 6 of last year, I'm like, this is like a guy who should be 7,300.
Next quarterback we should talk about. Bink King says Deshaun Watson double is popping for me. Now, Scott, you've talked about how this has been a money printer for you for years, playing quarterbacks against the Washington secondary. Now we have Deshaun Watson is 5,300. His pass catchers aren't very cheap. Now he's been terrible, but against this Washington defense, I mean, shouldn't we at least consider playing some Deshaun Watson against Washington when it works every single week? I mean, is this offense just so bad that you think it's not going to work for them?
The offense or the Commanders' defense is like QB proof, but like Watson is just so impossible. Like, how does it go when it's like an immovable, whatever. I'm not going to butcher it, but anyway, I think he's just so dusty. I think I almost want to. I might rather play Jameis. I think his shoulder shot, I don't think he can move the ball down the field. But yeah, I mean, it's like a nuts matchup. The stacks look good. It looks, he's cheap. Him and Trevor and Caleb, it's all kind of the same thing where it's like, this guy probably sucks, but the spot is just so good. My lean would be Caleb just because he's the cheapest. I also think I don't know if this is true or not, but it's my assumption. Like he is one of the most pressure sensitive quarterbacks in football because that's kind of how he played in college. And so he gets like the league's worst pass rush this week. I think that, goes a really long way for him, more than some of the other stuff. Yeah, so I'm probably not playing Watson. I'm probably not playing Lawrence. I mean, like, have either of them scored more than 20 fantasy points in their last, 20 games? And so I don't think they have break the slate upside, bury you upside, and fading them every week for however many years now. It's just winning proposition.
Yeah, it has not been a huge issue to just fade them. All right. Should I bring up this private chat that we're having? Because you say you like the idea. We can't promise anything, but I do like the idea that producer Trey has thrown at us of making exclusive 5-figure, 6-figure, and Millie Maker T-shirts for outside the box or just fantasy points. Yeah, that would be pretty sweet if you could get that done. And it seems like you guys get things done pretty quickly on the merch front. I mean,
yeah. What if it's I got a fantasy point subscription and all I got was this
stupid T-shirt,
5-figure DFS win, and this awesome T-shirt.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Certainly. You've got the talent at Fantasy Points to cook something up there. Good idea there. All right, sticking with the quarterbacks though. Good breakdown. Those are three of the quarterbacks I was definitely going to bring up. So I appreciate you cutting out the middleman there. Lamar Jackson, somebody brought him up in chat. I mean, he's facing Cincinnati, just a really easy defense. I think, it's easier to want to go to running backs against Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson, you kind of think maybe they're going to be playing with the lead, but the spread isn't that large. I think this game is in Cincinnati, if I'm remembering correctly. So maybe they will need to continue throwing throughout the game. Great matchup for Lamar. Any interest there?
Yeah, I think it's just a question of can Cincinnati keep this close? Vegas seems pretty confident they can. Baltimore's only favored by 2.5. And so we've talked about this before in close wins, I guess, or close games, just, the total ends within 6 points. Jackson averages, 25% more rushing yards per game. He's been awesome this year. He's hit 24.6 DK in 3 of 4 games. Bengals have given up the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the last 3 weeks. It looks like a really good spot. Zay Flowers, I think, is the obvious stack there. But again, a lot is riding on can Cincinnati keep this close. Jake Tribby's all over Joe Burrow this week. He thinks it's like a massive I'm him game from him where they need to win this game. Like it is rough out there in Ohio. So he's, he could chuck it 50 times. And, I think that's compelling, but it looked to me like watching the tape last week, like he might have suffered a hyperextension to his knee and then also an ankle injury. And so I just worry about that, plus the wrist. So like our site is very heavily Derrick Henry this week. And I like that, but it's a very real possibility. Cincinnati gets up early, or again, this is a close game, and it's Lamar who goes crazy or Burrow who goes burr.
Yeah, I will say I'm super in Jake's head, so that's why he's talking about Joe Burrows, because I've won back-to-back in the cage match. Unless I'm not sure if you saw that, Scott. I've won back-to-back weeks, and I drafted a Joe Burrow double stack this week. So Jake's just like, oh my god, I'm going to lose to a Joe Burrow.
Oh
double
yeah,
stack. So that's why he really likes Joe Burrow, because
you really can't miss. You're on such a hot streak. He's like, exactly. Oh, Burrow's going to score 50.
Yeah, obviously Joe Burrow's going to go off. I think Lamar, Burrow will both be in my player pool. Josh Allen to me is pretty interesting against Houston. They actually have not given up that many pass yards on the year, but I do think that secondary has shown that it can be kind of vulnerable, and Houston's offense should be able to keep up with the Bills. So it kind of feels like a game where maybe they need to throw a little bit more than usual. We have Khalil Shakir out, so I kind of think you get some cheaper pass catching options that make the stack a little bit more viable with the really expensive Josh Allen. So this is me getting outside the box. I think nobody's really going to Josh Allen, but this is a game with 2 great offenses. The Bills, part of the issue with them being the rotation is just so like there are too many cooks in the kitchen, I guess, as far as the wide receivers go. Now you lose Khalil Shakir, who leads the team in targets, in route participation, all that. Now you got to think some of the cheaper guys maybe step up, and it's a little bit easier. Any thoughts on a Josh Allen stack?
What you learned nothing from our best ball drafts that Josh Allen, you run Josh Allen naked, you don't stack. I mean, like the stack has done nothing this year, and if it's done anything with anyone, it's Khalil Shakir, who looked to me like the number one, even though he was still at, like a 72% snap share in this weird sort of low upside gross platoon. So I didn't like that. I was going to dig deeper into this to see if I did have a favorite play, Kincaid or Curtis Samuel or Keon Coleman. I will say we know he has massive slate wrecking upside. Houston, bottom 5 to quarterbacks this year. They're also very vulnerable to quarterbacks on the ground this year and last year. It's a competitive game, which is, Bills are only 1-point favorites. That's even more crucial for him than Lamar Jackson. I think we got a report that said, Josh Allen met with the GM and said he wants to attempt 2 fewer design runs per game. And they agreed on that. But, if the game's tight, the game's competitive, they need to score points, all that goes out the window. we also like think this game is really interesting. I really think it's just like really wide range of outcomes where Bills have a good defense. They kind of slow the game down. Houston might not show up. So it could flop, but like just as obvious to me is like, oh yeah, dude, it's CJ Stroud versus Josh Allen. This game's going to go crazy. And that is what we have with the median projection. We have the over under on our end, like 2 points higher than what Vegas has it. And so, yeah, I think this could be a really fun game to target. It's just not the two quarterbacks I want to go all in, but I did write him up. I do get it. Okay. I do worry about the stack component with him. Maybe Stroud makes more sense at lower ownership, but
Stroud, you got Diggs with the revenge game. You got Nico Collins, just alpha.
The problem is it's like a worst possible matchup.
It is a terrible matchup for the Texans. Yeah, which is why I'm like, it seems like a pretty good matchup for Josh Allen not getting any ownership. I think I'll run some out.
I could also see James Cook going crazy.
For sure. Well, maybe I'll force you to build.
You're going a lot of 12 personnel and just really pounding the rock. But, it's not a great matchup for Cook on paper. Houston is more of a pass funnel.
Yeah. I might force you to build a Josh Allen stack. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's fine by me.
Yeah, it's not my favorite stack of the week, but I just think, it's going to be super low owned. So for large field tournaments, it's at least interesting. Like he does need to put up a big score because I think we have some really nice quarterbacks on the slate. But well, I'll think about forcing you to build a Josh Allen stack at the end of the show. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about? Geno Smith, actually, somebody brought up Geno Smith in chat. He is one of the chalky quarterbacks, 10%. I don't know. Since he was brought up, maybe we should touch on. Sounds like you're not that interested in Geno Smith.
No, it's just my love for the top two, Neil. No, I like Geno. I wrote up Geno, crazy high pass rate over expectation. Last 3 weeks, leading the league. The fast pace, top 3 in plays per game. Should beat up on the Giants. I think it's more of a DK Metcalf one-offs and Kenneth Walker one-offs than Geno, but just because I don't love the matchup for JSN, I don't really trust Lockett right now. But no, I certainly get it.
Okay. All right. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about?
Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jake's boy is Matt Stafford. I don't know. Again, to me, it's just the top two that I mentioned. Yeah. It's Flacco doubles, love doubles, game over. But I'm not an MME guy. If I was an MME, I might just do that anyway.
Yeah, Stafford is one that I kind of thought about and then ultimately didn't end up going there. But yeah, could obviously see Stafford throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't think I'm going to have him in my player pool, but yeah, at least interesting shout out there. All right, let's move on to running backs. The chalk being Kyron Williams, 7,600 projected for 33% ownership. Here we do have some real chalk at running back. Jordan Mason, 7,400 projected for 29% ownership. Kenneth Walker, 25% at 6,800. DeAndre Swift, 22% at 5,700. Tyrone Tracy, 22% at 4,300. Chuba Hubbard, 20% at 6,100. So let's draw the line there. There's a little bit of a drop off after that. So we have 6 pretty chalky running backs. Any of these that you plan to lean into? Any that you think you'd be significantly underweight to the field?
No, they're all really good plays. I'll say a concern with Kyron is he's a lot more game script sensitive than he gets credit for. Really not a ton of pass volume this year. Since the start of last year, he averages 10.3 more fantasy points per game in wins than losses, just 15.5 in losses. I don't know. Walker, I think, kind of goes crazy, but you could say, still working his way back from injury. Maybe it's not the full on bell cow role we saw in week 1, but I don't know. I think he goes crazy. And then Mason, it's just, he doesn't catch passes. So there's a lot more volatility here than he gets credit for. A lower floor. what if he just gets 99 rushing yards, right? And one touchdown. He's not going to be on the winning lineup. So,
yep, you can see
but and he's also like finally priced like he should be. The issue is it's the Nets matchup. So yeah. And he looks awesome. He looks great.
Yep. All right. Anything else on the chalk, or do you have some other favorite plays?
Yeah, I don't know why Swift is up there. Damn.
Okay. Yeah.
That seems really bad.
Who do you like better between? Wait, let's see. Swift is projected for 22% ownership. Let's see. Where is Trey? Trey Sermon 11%. So Trey Sermon half the ownership. They're the same price. Projected. Actually, Trey Sermon projected a little bit better than DeAndre Swift at half the ownership. Do you have any interest in just making that pivot?
Swift to who?
Trey Sermon.
Yeah, so my knock on Swift is like he sucked complete ass the first 3 weeks of the season, and now he's chalk. He's only had a 33% snap share inside the 10. So yeah, I think that's bad chalk. Sermon's an interesting pivot for sure. I want to be like really high on him just because we saw this last year where Zach Moss was an uber bell cow without Jonathan Taylor last year. Tyler Goodson doesn't really scare me. It's a good matchup, or it's a great matchup. But I don't know. Shane Steichen said it's going to be a committee. So that did make me nervous. And also like 5,700 is kind of, it's more than I was expecting. But yeah, I mean, I'd much rather play Sermon than Swift. I just don't know how high on my board Sermon is.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Like I have some interest there. I drafted him in the cage match. And just at this point, there are enough other good running backs that it's hard to really want to prioritize him. I don't think he's like a great running back. Maybe he'll surprise me and be better than I think he is, but really it's just a matchup play more than anything with Sermon. He's not really priced like the backup. Like he's not 4,300 like Tyrone Tracy. At that point, I'd be like, all right, I'm really 5,700 for, bless you, 5,700 for Trey Sermon. Just that doesn't strike me as like a misprice. Like it kind of feels like they priced him for the starter role, so he's fine, but not exceptional there. Any other running backs that you want to that you really like this week?
I'm getting in trouble, Neil, for giving too much away from behind the paywall. So you got to ask me about guys, I think. Okay. And I'll give you like two very off the wall plays, maybe.
Okay.
Well, I'll give you one non off the wall play. Derrick Henry, our site is like much higher on him than anyone else. Baltimore, just an insane negative 16% pass rate over expectation the last 2 weeks. He's hit 33 DraftKings fantasy points in back-to-back games, 175 rushing yards per game, 7.1 yards per carry. Cincinnati's run defense looks really bad. They rank bottom 3 in missed tackles and yards allowed after contact, 7th most rushing yards per game. We know he's the most game script sensitive running back in fantasy. So it does make me a little nervous. Vegas thinks this is close. I kind of just don't think it's going to be that close. Yeah, I don't know. Feel really good about this. Big dog. He's an absolute slate wrecker, and he looks awesome in this offense.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. Jerome Ford, again, you talk about not wanting to play Deshaun Watson, but Jerome Ford just 5,800. Washington also really bad against running backs this year. I have some interest there. Do you have any interest in Jerome Ford?
Yeah, I would just say questionable ceiling because, he's had this role for 2 years now. And I don't know, he's what, scored more than 20 fantasy points twice. And Donta Foreman's had 75% of the snaps inside the 10 since week 2. I don't know. He's just not a guy I ever really play, but I certainly get it at the price and based on his usage and given this matchup. But.
Yeah, I think with the matchup, I mean, the ownership higher than I would like it to be, but I have some interest there. Somebody brought up Travis Etienne on FanDuel, and I forget what the price is on FanDuel, but I think he's very much in play against the Colts on both sides. Just a great matchup for Travis Etienne. Are you with me on that? He's 6,700 on DraftKings. What's your level of interest in Etienne?
No, I get the matchup, but I'll let him beat me, and if he beats me, I can live with it. It's it's way more of a committee now. Tank Bigsby honestly looks great. The offense looks totally inept and dysfunctional. So I just think there's better spots.
Okay.
For instance, Josh Jacobs, by the way, we're the outside the box show. So like, obviously everyone wants to play Green Bay receivers. There's a world where Jacobs scores 3 touchdowns this week. It's pretty straightforward with this one. Is like, either he breaks the slate with 100 yards and multiple touchdowns, or you just didn't need him in your lineups. Like he's a committee back. But he gets all of the goal line work, which is so crucial. He's also better and more talented than his backfield partner. And so awesome leverage play. I'll certainly consider him on my Flacco lineups, but then not play him at all on my love lineups.
Yeah, I love that call. I love the leverage that you get with Josh Jacobs. I think he's just a strong play in a vacuum. 6,400, nice price tag. One of the best matchups you can ask for against the Rams. So very much with you on Josh Jacobs. The Javonte Williams, 13% projected ownership at 5,200, I think is essentially just a matchup play against Vegas. Like this could be the one where the Broncos are actually competitive throughout the game. Javonte should get a good amount of work. Tyler Beatty no longer a thorn in his side. I think Beatty is out this week. Any interest in Javonte?
Yeah, I mean the price is right. I get that he sucks and he hasn't done anything in since the start of last season. But he is coming off of like an awesome game for him where usage and volume was great without Beatty. By all of the advanced metrics, it was like maybe his best game as a member of the Broncos. Raiders giving up the most yards per carry to opposing running backs of any defense. Crosby, I think, could miss this week. Positive game script, and he's been very game script sensitive. So it certainly makes sense. I don't know that I want to play a chalky Javonte in spite of all that, but yeah. I think that's more than fair. Yeah.
I think you talked about Tyrone Tracy a little bit while talking about the chalk. I may have not listened closely enough, but can we just talk about that briefly? Because he's 4,300, former wide receiver. How much of a role do you expect Tyrone Tracy to have? How good of chalk do you think he is at 4,300?
Yeah, I've been doing this thing on this show where like my redraft guys, I'll talk them down from a DFS perspective.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do that with Tracy. Like I'm legitimately excited about this. I was saying like the number one upside wins championships pick in dynasty rookie drafts, where he was going, pre-draft, he was a UDFA, and then post-draft, he was still like, I don't know, round 3 in a rookie draft. But the allure and upside with him is really high. So he was a wide receiver at Iowa. As a sophomore, he averaged 2.26 yards per route run, which is more than Keon Coleman or Adonai Mitchell ever had in their college careers. And then he converted to running back. Like he had a career, 36 carries, and then converts to running back. And he ranks top 3 in yards after contact per attempt, top 3 in missed tackles forced per attempt. So he looked great on this small sample, crushed at the combine. And so that's what like fantasy players have been, yearning for since David Johnson. Like we thought we might've had that in Antonio Gibson for a while. It's like the converted wide receiver who's like nice on the ground and then gets peppered with targets. I don't know that we're going to see that. But I do think he has a pretty big edge over Eric Gray. Tracy's played on 81% of the non-Singletary snaps, out snaps Eric Gray 6-1 inside the 10. Matchup isn't something that scares me at all. It's probably closer to neutral on paper. Do the Giants just totally fail to show up without Malik Neighbors? I think there's a good possibility of that, but you're talking about 4,300. I'm more than willing to make that gamble.
Yeah, and the fact that he is at least theoretically involved in the passing game as well as the running game is kind of like, even if they do get behind on Seattle, hopefully he just picks up some PPR points. He's cheap enough that you don't need all that much to pay it off. So yeah, I'm with you. I like to play on Tyrone Tracy. I was just pulling up to look if he was on the best ball team that you drafted for me, where it was just all of Scott's favorite plays, because I feel like you were pretty into Tyrone Tracy as a best ball play all summer.
Yeah, last round pick. That just felt so easy to me.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep going. You brought up Antonio Gibson as one of the last of this type of running back that we got excited about. Now we might have Antonio. I mean, we do have Antonio Gibson starting this game. It's official now. Ramondre Stevenson has been benched. Who knows if that's just the first drive we see more of Antonio Gibson instead of Ramondre Stevenson, and then it's still just a split. But kind of interesting that Ramondre Stevenson has been benched for his 4 fumbles in 4 games. Antonio Gibson 5,100 now taking over as the starter. Any interest there against a Miami run funnel defense?
Yeah, so this is an interesting week where it's not just we're getting Tyrone Tracy and Trey Sermon, but we're getting quite a bit more than that. We're getting Antonio Gibson starting the game. We don't, it could just be like, he gets the first drive and then it's Ramondre from there. But I don't know. He's looked good with the Patriots. He had 67 receiving yards last week, and then he had like 96 2 or 3 weeks before that, despite being the clear RB2 on the team. Now he's starting the game. Is 5,100. It looks like he's 1% owned. It's a great matchup. Dolphins are just dead. I don't think their offense is going to show up. And then no team has given up more rushing touchdowns than them this year. So I like that, but he's not the only one. There's also, if Brian Robinson Jr. sits out, can you check on his status for me? But then Austin Eckler, I think, becomes an absolutely amazing play. I talked about this last week where I wanted to play B-Rob. And then of course, what's his face went off and cost that one guy like $250,000, the one who finished in 9th place or whatever. But
yeah,
he's averaging 6.4 yards per carry, led the team in receiving yards the first 2 weeks. Should be fully back from the concussion. And I talked about how Kingsbury typically likes a bell cow role for when one of his 2 running backs go down. And, we did see that from Robinson the first 3 quarters. And I guess then he might've picked up that injury. But he had 17 of 20 touches in the first 3 quarters.
The latest I'm seeing is a game time decision for Brian Robinson. The Twitter Dr. Deepak Chona gives it a data slightly favors playing without a dip. So that's where that's just from an hour ago. So
and then he is not the only one either. There's also Alexander Madison.
Yep.
What's Zamir White's status? But like,
he's
even
doubtful. Zamir
doubtful?
White was doubtful as of yesterday. Yeah.
But even if he was playing, like, the coach had just said, Alexander Madison has earned more work and he's going to get that this week and moving forward. I kind of think this is interesting. I don't think anyone's really on him. Matchup's probably good. But you could just say this is like the least valuable backfield in fantasy. This is the lowest implied point total of the week. There's negative game script. And so he's just dead. But yeah, I think all those guys are interesting. And, relative to like a Trey Sermon or a Tyrone Tracy, they're going to be far less highly owned.
I want to just shout this out because this is the first week that we do have updated for 2024 schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. I was bugging Scott about this last week. Hey, is this going to be available next week? So I'm glad to see that the site did update. I know you want to wait for a big enough sample size, still a pretty small sample size through 4 weeks, but a useful tool to kind of see how teams have generally done in different matchups. And you can see here Miami. So this is what I like about Antonio Gibson, ranked 12th or so in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, 12th worst in terms of allowing fantasy points to opposing running backs. So pretty good spot here for Antonio Gibson, particularly when you look at wide receivers. It's really tough spot against Miami. So a little bit of a run funnel, at least based on this metric. Denver, I think, has been Yeah, pretty tough against the run so far, at least in terms of schedule adjusted stuff.
They were like the worst last year, but yeah, on paper they've been solid. I just don't know which one's real or not.
Yeah. Stephen Leibowitz points out the Patriots also lost one of their competent offensive linemen from the worst line in football. David Andrews is out. His backup is a question.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, like I said, he very well could be like a horrible play, but we're projecting 1% ownership. And like I said, he did have 64 receiving yards last week. And he was always, like top 3 among running backs in target share at the end of each year. So,
yeah. All right, let me see. Since I'm throwing names at you instead of just letting you name.
Oh no, I think we might have covered. We might have missed one or two, but only one that's coming to mind is just Chuba Hubbard.
Yep.
Because I mean, this is why Jonathan Brooks is my Exodia running back. It's the RB1 and the Dave Canales offense, and so it's you worry about this matchup, but it's like, do we just play Hubbard every week until Brooks comes back and Dalton's the starter? Yeah, maybe that's good.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Certainly like him more than Ford, Etienne, Javonte, Sermon.
Actually, I was about to say not a great matchup with the Bears, but I think that's actually.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it's a perceived bad matchup, but it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, you can see here it's actually an above average matchup for running backs against the Bears. So slight run funnel, I guess. Yeah, seems like a good spot for Chuba Hubbard.
You could pair him up with Panthers defense, which is cheap and underrated.
Yep, I like that. I just had a thought, and now I've lost who I was going to. Oh, somebody in chat brought up Devin Achane. To me, not really playable this week. Raheem Mostert back. He's coming in at 1% ownership. So maybe you want to say like 7,200. 1% owned Devin Achane is always in play, just because we've seen his ability to break a slate. I feel like I'm not getting there this week, but maybe I'm wrong about that. How do you feel about Devin Achane?
I think he's hurt. I think Bijan is hurt.
Yep.
I think Burrow's hurt. And I typically just don't play guys I think are hurt.
Yep. Okay.
Especially at 7,200 after he's done nothing for how many weeks now? That offense is just dead.
Any other running backs that you want to bring up? I know you want me to throw them at you, but
no, I think we did good here.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Talk about some wide receivers. We've got a little bit of chalk at wide receiver, starting with the Packers. Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks. Reed at 24%, Wicks 23%, Nico Collins 22% projected ownership, Michael Pittman 20%, Jordan Whittington 20%. So let's start with those 5 receivers above 20%. Anybody that you think you're going to just lock in? Anybody you're going to be significantly underweight on?
Yeah. So Jaden Reed is my in-season Exodia. Every week in my article since week 1, I was just like, this is the guy. Go out and trade for this guy right now. Do everything you can to acquire this guy. We had a ton of him last week. We were all over that. And I think this week I prefer Wicks by a decent margin. And it looks like a key reason why is, well, Wicks smashed just about everyone except for Nico and XFP last week. It was one of the biggest XFP games of any player this season. Basically, he was like splitting the Christian Watson role, and it was like hurting both players. But now it's, combined, 125% of that role. And it looks that's such a valuable role to be in on, one of the best offenses in football with the best play caller. But the key point here is the Rams look like a generational reverse slot funnel. They've given up the most fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers by a wide margin, but just the second fewest to slot wide receivers. And so that's going to be Wicks. That's not going to be Reed, who's in the slot. They're also getting destroyed on the deep ball. That's going to be Wicks. The dude would have scored 40 fantasy points last week if he didn't drop like three passes. Yeah. Like even if he drops 1 or 2 this week, like he can still do that in this matchup. The Rams are the new Commanders, I think, in terms of targeting wide receivers against.
Yeah. So you're in on both Reed and Wicks.
More Wicks, for sure. More Wicks.
Okay, at 5,000.
But I mean, I love Reed. Reed's one of my guys. Don't want to hit on him, but
I believe Jake was in chat earlier saying that he was just here to make sure that Scott doesn't recommend Bo Melton as a cash game play. Is that because you're super into Bo Melton? As long as we're talking about the Packers, projected for 3% ownership at 3,300, was very good last year in a small sample size in terms of yards per route run. Obviously has an elite matchup. Romeo Doubs now suspended, so I guess officially out for this game. We've already got Christian Watson out, so probably we're going to see some Bo Melton. How do you feel about it?
yeah. So apparently I had some hot takes in my article where Jake was editing it and he was like, "This is literally an insane thing to say. Please do not say this when you're on with Neil." I really like Melton. I think it's really exciting. You know, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, both not going to play. Melton last year only had 2 games with a snap share over 40%. He averaged 8 targets, 19.1 DraftKings fantasy points per game in those games. He was the first Packers receiver to hit 100 yards last year. He did it in week 17. He ranked behind only Tyreek, Nico, and Ayuk in yards per route run last year, albeit on a very small sample. Very small sample again this year. I think he's like top 6 in yards per route run. Obviously, the concern is there's a really good chance he splits time with Malik Heath. Both Heath and Melton played exactly 10 snaps last week. Heath, 6'2", 213, probably a better fit for the Dobbs role than Melton, who's 5'11", 190 pounds. And then maybe even that's like not a super valuable role. Again, Matt Harmon calls it the sacrificial X. But I mean, he didn't split time with Heath at the tail end of last year. He just went nuclear. He's 3,300. There's just tremendous cost adjusted upside. So I really like Melton for tournaments. And again, what did I say? Too. I said, generational reverse slot funnel. So I don't know. Yeah. I like it.
I like it too. So we're on the same page in liking Bo Melton. I thought about actually including him in my write-up as in 20 lineups, being somebody I would target. I chickened out and put him in as an MME play, but I do have a lot of interest there in Bo Melton. Also,
so you asked me about Nico Collins and Jordan Whittington, and so what I would say about Nico is I think he's just like Julio Jones reincarnated, and he's freaking awesome. It is the worst possible matchup. Buffaloes are just so good against outside wide receivers, against receivers deep, and that's a concern. Jordan Whittington, I would just say, I think Atwell is the better tournament play when he's drawing a third of the ownership, because Atwell led the team in receiving yards each of the last 2 weeks. He ranks second among all players in yards per route run. And there's some uncertainty here. Whereas, okay, so Whittington got the usage last week. The week before that, I was like, I think he could be in the Cooper Kupp role. And it looked like he got that role last week. But it's also, we saw the Rams go from 90% 11 to 60% to 85%. And so there's some uncertainty. Like maybe McVay has figured out what he wants to do, or maybe he's just going to keep mixing it up week to week. And so that, I don't know, I guess that would be my lean.
2-2 over Whittington.
Yeah, but that's really
Robinson just dead at this point.
No, that's really just an ownership thing.
Yeah,
I would say with those two. And then Pittman Downs. Yeah, that's just amazing. And that's a key part of why I like Flacco doubles so much. There's just not a better on paper matchup than Jacksonville. They're giving up the most schedule adjusted to wide receivers. They're giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones. They're giving up the 2nd most to outside wide receivers, and then 9th most to slot wide receivers. And so if you hear all that, you should be like, all right, edge to Pittman, who's 900 more. What I will say is, like, don't sleep on Downs either, though. Like, if you just look at what Downs and like Pittman without Downs has been like a mid-range wide receiver one, but Pittman with Downs has been barely more productive than Downs. Downs is awesome. I think he's an ascending talent. And so Yeah, I think both are absolutely two of the best wide receiver GPP plays of the slate.
Yep. So you love the Colts guys, love the Packers guys. Nico Collins just always pretty in play. I wanted to, since we were talking about the Packers receivers, I wanted to just ask this. Scott says, Scott, how does the Rams activating a corner off of IR today affect the outside? I think he's talking about Darius Williams. Just a quick Twitter search here. Any thoughts on Rams activating a cornerback?
Yeah, I honestly didn't even look at that. I would just say they are so far and away the worst that even if they do make an upgrade, it's still such a fall far that I still see them being really bad. And it's also we knew this coming into the season. They were a bottom 5 secondary on paper, and it's just they've been so much worse. And then McVay's offense, forcing teams to keep chucking it. So yeah.
49ers. So you're not super into Brock Purdy, but you were not opposed to playing some Brock Purdy. We've got Brandon Ayuk is going pretty low owned. We have Deebo Samuel is pretty chalky, 17% projected ownership. Ayuk down at 5% projected ownership. And then I don't know if you have any consideration for Jawan Jennings, 1% projected ownership. But just tell me about your level.
Yeah, why wouldn't I? When Jennings is 1% and he leads all players in yards per route run, he's led the team in receiving yards in 3 of 4 games. He scored 50 DraftKings fantasy points 2 weeks ago. And so Deebo, 1,200 more, uber chalky. I think that's really interesting. I mentioned this too. There's an overlap between his role, the routes he runs, and George Kittle's. Our injury expert, who's phenomenal, Dr. Edwin Porras, thinks Kittle's going to be limited this week. Arizona's also a slot funnel, which is where Jennings runs. What is it, 68% of his routes? They rank bottom 10 to slot wide receivers, top 10 to outside wide receivers. They're also top 5 against the deep ball, but bottom 12 everywhere else. So I can't hate on Deebo. The only argument against him is ownership, and even then, he's a good play. But Jennings at 1%, I think that's really interesting.
And Ayuk at 5%.
Bro, I don't know. I'd rather go Jennings, I think. But we know according to Ass, he's getting open. It should only be a matter of time. I don't think anything from the schematic matchup or the on paper matchup really tells us this is for sure an Ayuk game, but I think I'd go Jennings. But
all right,
that's a total YOLO play where it's just he probably flops for you, but there's asymmetric upside there significantly.
Yeah, I had not considered Jawan Jennings until I brought him up on the show. He was one that I was kind of thinking, I feel like with everybody back, probably not going to be a great play. But as you say, he's been pretty good. He's been putting up fantasy points. Maybe the team, they see how much success they've had throwing to Jawan Jennings. Well, why not just keep doing it?
Yeah, well, this is the fight I got him with Jake, because I might have just leaned to Galaxy Brain this week, but I think Jennings, I think Melton, I think Eckler and Gibson, I think they're all interesting. And with chalk really congregating this week, especially around 2 games or so, you might have to be looking at these off the wall plays.
Yeah, I think you don't want to. I actually just did a short video on DFS in general. One general thought on how to play DFS in 2024 for Tom Strachan putting together a video. And my suggestion was, I think people are getting too far off the wall at this point. I think in 2024, everybody who's playing tournaments kind of knows ownership is avoiding ownership is a good thing. If you can just avoid ownership, you'd rather play low owned plays. But I think people have taken it to the point where they're giving up too much in terms of projection. So just, you can mix in your Bo Melton, your Jawan Jennings. You just don't want to probably have 5 of those guys in the same lineup. So I think they're all great large field tournament plays. You just have to keep in mind, you want to have some chalk. You want to stay within, in the Millie Maker, probably within 20 fantasy points of the top projected optimal lineup. Even in small field, even more so in small field, you probably want to be within 10 fantasy points of the optimal. So I think people sometimes take it too far, but I think all of these are like great, just like, as the, one of the two non-chalky pieces in your lineup, these types of plays can make a lot of sense. So I'm with you. I think both are sound like pretty strong plays, particularly Melton for me. I really like Juwan Jennings. I'm not sure if I'll get there this week, but I think it's at least a good shout out, good thing to talk about. Let's see who I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, I sort of feel like we should talk about, just because I think people might want to lean into it too much, or maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of worry about the role without Malik Neighbors. Like, I think there might be an assumption that, oh God, he's going to crush now. He's going to be targeted 30 times with no Malik Neighbors there, but has not really been the case in the past. You've always said, I forget, you are biased against Wan'Dale Robinson. So why am I even bringing him up to you? But you want to talk about it briefly?
Yeah, I think that assumption's, very fair. And I really do just hate the guy. Has he ever killed you in DFS? Has he ever, he gets 12 targets regularly, but does he ever crack 50 receiving yards? It seems like I don't know why they keep doing this. It's 3rd and 10. You target him. He's either going to get 0 or 9 yards. It's 3rd and 1. He's going to get exactly 0 or negative yards. Dude just never picks up first downs, despite, I think he's like top 3 in targets right now. It just doesn't feel like a GPP play to me. I could be wrong, but I'm just personal bias here. Just never going to play him.
5,600, the price tag's a little bit, it's high enough that I probably am not going to get there. Maybe if I do
Brian Thomas Jr.'s 300 more. Yeah, I'm just never going to do that.
Yeah, it's I might get there a little bit, but not a huge priority for me. Amari Cooper. So you talked about not wanting to play Deshaun Watson. Does that apply to all of his pass catchers as well? Okay.
No. Amari Cooper, he's a great DFS play every single week. It's just the nature of his role that lends itself towards spike weeks and high variance outputs. He ranks 5th in air yards per game, 6th in targets per game, just 47th in fantasy points per game. Like I said, Watson's playing terribly. He has one of the worst catchable target rates of any player. But I mean, hey, he had this 80-yard touchdown catch that was nullified due to holding, and honestly, like, if there wasn't holding on that play, I think he would have had that touchdown catch. And he'd be averaging 25.1 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks had that held. And then it's Washington, right? It's Washington's defense gives up the most fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones this year. They did that last year, and it just made me a lot of money. The one drawback, one cause for concern here is, and so I was very high on Marvin Harrison Jr. last week, and it was again the Commanders defense versus wide receiver ones, and the one question I had with Harrison is like, well, he has the highest average depth of route in the league, and Washington is weirdly good against the deep ball this year. They're top 5 in yards per game allowed on deep passes. They're bottom 5 everywhere else. And I was like, nah, screw it. Harrison's going to go nuclear. But because he didn't, and because Dan Quinn is playing too high at such a high rate, I am kind of nervous about this. This might be a sneaky, not amazing spot for Cooper, but it could be a great spot for Judy or Elijah or Njoku or whatever. Just because like so much of his production and fantasy value comes in the deep ball. And like I said, Washington's been sneakily really good there this year. So that's just one concern, but still like my gut is like wide receiver ones versus Commanders. And it's a guy with an awesome role and he's not really priced like it.
Yeah. Not that expensive, as Alvin points out. Amari Cooper 6,100 on FanDuel. To me, that's like wow. I think he might make the cash lineup on FanDuel definitely in consideration there. Way too cheap as far as FanDuel pricing goes, where it's 60,000 salary cap instead of 50,000. And Judy, I'm glad you brought up Judy and Elijah Moore. To me, are both pretty solid large field GPP plays as well. Judy coming in at 3% ownership. Elijah Moore at 1%. So both getting virtually 0 ownership. You keep on referring to Washington being great for wide receiver ones. Are they also pretty great for wide receiver 2 and 3? Like, is it the entire receiving core that gets a bonus against Washington, or is it specifically wide receiver ones that you're targeting against the Commanders defense?
It's just kind of how it's shaken out this year, I guess. But not always the case. I mean, Godwin and Evans both went off. And then last year, I think there were multiple games where Devonta and AJ Brown both had over 100 receiving yards, and you saw that. It was just like I have this stat where it's just, fantasy points per game allowed to wide receiver ones, and last year they were like 33% worse than the next closest defense, which you just never see that. But no, it's a bad defense, and like I said, if due to scheme or whatever, probably too high coverage and scheme, they are selling out to stop the deep ball, then it really opens up stuff for the underneath guys.
Yep. And we got the question in chat. Does anybody know if Njoku is going to play? I'm just looking that up right now. What is the latest on Njoku?
I think last I saw was questionable, but my read was he probably will play. I don't know.
4 hours ago. Okay, this is just a random guy. It says, looks like he might not play. Let's see. Adam Schefter, 4 hours ago. Browns activated guard Michael Dunn from reserve non-football illness. Placed Alex Wright on injured reserve. Okay, where is... Okay, they didn't do anything with... Okay, never mind. I'm just going to ignore this. I'm reading what I thought was going to be a blurb on David Njoku because somebody quote tweeted it and mentioned Njoku, but I don't think it really tells us much. How about the Bengals? So we talked about Joe Burrow a little bit. Any interest in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Andre Yoshevas?
Yeah, I think I would only be doing this in Lamar or Burrow stacks, but yeah, it looks good. It's really weird with Jamar Chase. So he, over the previous 2 seasons, was averaging 10 targets per game. He had double-digit targets and at least 50% of those. And then this year he's been at like 6-7 targets through 4 games. T. Higgins seeing way better volume. But Chase way more productive, way more efficient. And the matchup, Chase has like these weird pressure splits where like when Burrow has a clean pocket, his, Chase's target per route run rate like doubles or triples, something insane like that. And so we think this is a great O-line matchup for him. But yeah, I really think you could play Higgins. Just volume has been there. He typically goes under-owned relative to Chase, but yeah, I think for me, priority would be Chase, and I'd really save that for just when I'm playing the quarterbacks.
Okay. You mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. in passing. He's 5,900. Obviously, great matchup with the Colts. Let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr. or Christian Kirk. I don't know if you have any interest in like Gabe Davis, anybody else, but those two in particular stand out to me as pretty interesting plays. Thomas at 8%, Christian Kirk at 7%, both in, I believe, pretty solid matchups. Any interest there?
Yeah, so let me just say, like, I really like BTJ. I was kind of torn on him coming out, where I was like, well, 55% of his yards came on just 2 routes. Like he just ran the go route and he ran the crossing route, whatever it was. And that was all he did really. And if you take that away, so I think he's going to be raw. I think he's going to struggle as a rookie. And the flip side of that argument, which I didn't get to until maybe late in the off season, was like, yeah, but he was freaking awesome on just 2 routes. Like watch what he does with NFL coaching, or he learns another tool in his toolbox. And you can go on Fantasy Points data and like look at his route tree, and like he's running the full route tree and he's succeeding from just about every route he's running. He looks awesome. He ranks top 15 among all wide receivers in yards per route run and total fantasy points, 2.48. Anything over 2 for a rookie is like elite. He's had 9 targets in back-to-back games, 3 fewer than Kirk over that span. And so that makes him look like the wide receiver 2. But to me, that makes him look like the wide receiver 1, because Kirk just had nuts matchups. Like the Bills are the biggest slot funnel in football, which, lends itself towards Stephon Diggs this week, maybe more so than Nico. And then they faced, who was it? The cover 3 heavy Texans, which is like that's Kirk's coverage scheme that he smashes in. And so those were all Kirk games. Those are all tough matchups for BTJ. And now it's the exact opposite this week. The Colts are giving up the 6th most yards per game to outside wide receivers. They're a lot better against slot wide receivers. They're pretty bad against tight ends. So maybe that's a point for Strange or Ingram. But yeah, I just think BTJ is going to be, he could be 7,100 5 weeks from now. And so I really like him. He's for sure one of my guys this week.
All right. Love to hear it. So Brian Thomas Jr., somebody you can play this week, maybe as the bring back in your Joe Flacco stack or just as a one-off. Regardless, looks like a really solid play. Any Seattle receivers, TK Metcalf, JSN, Lockett? Yeah,
DK is one of my favorite plays at the slate. He's had 100 yards in 3 straight games. Top 4 in XFP per game over this span. Giants as defense has given up the 6th most fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones. They deploy single high coverage at a top 5 rate. Since the start of last season, Metcalf has seen a 73% boost to his targets per route run against single high. That's 2nd most of any player. So it just all lines up nicely for a DK Metcalf smash game. JSN in a much tougher spot, and Lockett, I don't know. He just hasn't really done anything to impress me.
Okay. We've talked about Stephon Diggs sort of in passing. You talked about this potentially being a slot funnel matchup against the Bills, also a revenge game for Stephon Diggs.
Is this the most like revenge game of all time?
It might be the most revenge game of all time. Diggs project for 4% ownership at 6,900. No, I don't think Diggs cares at all about revenge. He's just stays in his lane, just straight shooter.
He's not one of those petty types.
No, yeah, not at all.
Yeah, and so here's the thing: is like I don't know that it's still a good matchup. And Tank Dell's back. It's just it's the Stephon Diggs funnel matchup, and then it's also like the Stephon Diggs funnel narrative, right? So the price isn't great, 6,900. But yeah, so this is what Buffalo does. They sell out to stop the deep ball. If you look on the fantasy points data suite and you go to advanced passing or advanced receiving defense view, filter for 20 plus yards, it's just every single year over the last 4 years, probably 8 years, Bills always ranked top 3 in deep yards per game allowed. And so that opens up stuff for guys underneath. And it opens up stuff for the slot wide receiver. Bills have given up the 4th most catches to wide receivers lined up in the slot this year, but the fewest to wide receivers lined up out wide. And so, Nico's a little chalky. I could see it. I don't know how high he ranks overall for me, but it's a fun narrative.
I tried to do your thing of, and I don't think I did this right. I was just trying to do it. Oh, I did. Okay. But the Bills are not at the top here. Where
no, you scroll all the way down.
Oh, I see.
I actually don't know where they are this year.
26 this year.
Yeah. But if you look at past years, they're always like 32nd, 31st, 32nd.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I mean, the thing with the narrative with Diggs is like, he might just be satisfied with, I mean, he wouldn't be, but like maybe they just want to get him a touchdown. Doesn't necessarily mean he has a great DFS game. He's not, I don't think you can guarantee that, and you couldn't anyway. But like, who knows? Johnny
is such a good DFS historian. When I do my show with him tomorrow, I'm going to ask him what the most revenge games in DFS history were, and I'm sure he's going to have like 3 really good ones. I know there was one that went absolutely bonkers for like 50 fantasy points. I just don't remember who it was.
Yeah. But Diggs seems like a fine play to me. I probably want to be over 4%, but I'm not going to like jam him in because it is a tough matchup.
This is so sweet. He didn't even ask a question. Is this Emo Cowboy?
This is Emo Cowboy. Yeah. Good to see you, Tyler.
Dude, look at that hair. My goodness.
He has the best hair. I mean,
that's incredible.
As you point out, just he has that anime hair. Super jealous. Just a great head of hair there for Tyler, and he just he posted his Ass Man shirt on Twitter yesterday. he bought the Ass Man shirt, so appreciate the super chat here from Tyler, supporting the channel in many different ways. Thank you, Tyler.
569 too.
569. I wonder if that was intentional. Yeah, if you know Tyler at all, that was very much intentional. The 69 cents. Okay. Tank Dell, I guess you brought him up. I mean, he's only 5,400. We know Tank Dell can have big games. Also has a tough matchup with the Bills. Yeah. I don't know.
He's due. I'm hoping he just sucks this week, and then I'll be excited to play him next week.
Yeah, that's kind of my hope. Also, Cortland Sutton has like 35 targets on the year. He's 5,500. Great matchup.
He's far and away the top XFP value of the week. He ranks 7th among all wide receivers in XFP per game. Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins are the only other wide receivers with 9+ targets in 3 games this year. Really just insane volume. The flip side of that is he ranks dead last among all players in catchable target rate. And we talked about, I like the matchup. We talked about the Amari Cooper play that was negated due to holding. If that counted, the Raiders would be giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones. It's insane how regression works this way. Logically it shouldn't work this way, but historically this is just how it freaking happens, where it's like, oh, this dude's due for a positive regression. And so you expect him to average to exceed his XFP by 2 points this week, by 3 points the next week, by 0, and then by 1. Sometimes it just comes on one week. This happened to Joe Mixon, who's a top XFP regression candidate for 6 weeks. And then he scored 5 touchdowns in one game. And then he was neutral from then on. Or Tony Pollard, who went from most efficient to least efficient, or Devon A-Chain, who went from most efficient to least. So it could just be one of those games where he goes nuclear. Maybe that's this week. It wasn't super high on my board, but he was someone I had to write up just because he's the top XFP value.
Yep. Love that. What else? Who else do we want to talk about? Anybody else have names to throw out there for Scott? I thought I had another one. I don't think I'm super interested in Trey Tucker or Jacoby Myers. No Devontae Adams, so they become in play, but tough matchup.
This is tricky. Do you know who led all receivers in target share last week?
Trey Tucker. No,
it was Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers, yeah.
Yeah. And Trey Tucker won. Shout out Russ Miller, who made $250K on a 1K parlay. But if Tucker had one -2 yard catch, he wouldn't have hit it. But Tucker kind of feels like maybe he's a cash play. Jacoby could be. My issue is I think Surtain shadows him. My level of confidence on that is 60%, which isn't great. But I do think that's what's going to happen. So neither really super high on my board. Did you mention Terry McLaurin just now, or was that in my head?
No, I did not. I did not bring up Terry McLaurin. Sounds like you want to talk about Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, he's just solid. You don't need Jaden Daniels to play him this week. Browns play man at a top 3 rate, which is really good for McLaurin, who is seeing a ton of usage deep, a ton of volume deep. And the Browns, whenever you pulled that up, were before would have ranked top 7 in yards per game allowed on deep passes. And then we also saw last week too, I was complaining about it, where Terry McLaurin was just deep shot only. But last week we did see him get 5 targets on shallow crossers and ins and all these easy short area routes. Before that, he was averaging just 1 per game. And the other thing is how we're complaining about, pull up the wide receiver versus cornerback chart. Excuse me. We were complaining about how McLaurin just, Kingsbury keeps McLaurin to his side. That actually works in his favor this week. The wide receiver versus cornerback, it's not on the data suite. It's on the fantasy.
Gotcha.
You don't have that in your
okay, it's under
research.
There we go. There's a wide receiver coverage matrix thing in the data suite. That's what I thought we were talking about.
I know, dude. We got way too many tools. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's a minor point, but it's D-Bro also brought this up to me, by the way. Yeah. So he gets the much better matchup. Like Newsom has been, Denzel Ward is really talented, but like Ward just sticks to his side and McLaurin just sticks to his side. So it's opposite sides. And so teams have been picking on Emerson this year. So pretty good cornerback matchup if they don't flip Ward this week, but historically they don't do that.
This is a cool tool. I think I'm going to have to start leaning into this one a little bit more. Also,
yeah, I think we do this better than anyone else. Like I got my start in this industry under Mike Clay's tutelage, doing wide receiver versus cornerback stuff, and so like I care about it. Like Jake thinks it's absolutely worthless. I think it's like it mostly doesn't matter, but it's a little bit of art and science, and you can like Patrick Surtain matters, Joey Porter Jr. matters, but for the most part, probably a little overstated. But just this part, the matchup advantage, I spent like one summer day all day at the pool just meditating on the best way to do it, and then I came up with this, and so far it's been really helpful for prop bets, and I don't know, I think it's pretty sweet. This might actually be a free tool, so even if you're not a sub, you can get access to this.
Just under research and reports, and it's down here, wide receiver cornerback matchups, if you want to check that out. Yeah, it's a cool tool. All right, other wide receivers. Somebody brought up Keenan Allen in chat, and I do think we should at least talk about the Bears. You got DJ Moore, and I hadn't thought about this revenge game for DJ Moore, or remember game for DJ Moore. Keenan Allen, great matchup against Carolina. Any interest in Bears receivers this week?
Yeah, but do you think he despises Chicago like Diggs despises the Bills?
According to the body language, or do you mean despises Carolina?
I'm sorry, Carolina. Yeah.
Probably not. He's probably glad to be out of Carolina.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, but it could still be. Where is this game? Sometimes there's like goes back to Carolina. It's still just a feel good. Like, oh yeah, I played here for years. It's fun to be back. I don't know. We don't want to lean into that kind of stuff. But great matchup with Carolina, regardless, for Stephon Diggs and Keenan Allen. Any interest there?
Oh yeah. It's the nuts schematic matchup for Keenan. I just worry about the injury. He had 6 air yards last week. Didn't run a full route share. And then one of those injury experts was saying he thinks this is going to be something that limits him for a while, and really kind of bothers him all year. And he's old. But I mean, if he were fully healthy, this would be for sure the wide receiver play on the Bears to go with.
Does that bring Rome Odunze into play at all if we have Keenan Allen?
I really don't know. I wrote them up and I forget what I said. I have it in my notes somewhere. So if someone wants to ask me on Discord, I'll send it to them. But it's like a Caleb thing. If I play Caleb, I'll pick 2 receivers. But if not, I'm not going to touch it.
Interesting. DJ Moore has one of the better, as you can see, one of the better advantages. JC Horn, I think of as being a pretty solid, like their best cornerback.
This is the thing with cornerbacks, dude. It's so weird where like PFF did a big study on this too, where it's like the most important thing is like coverage grade. Like having an elite cornerback matters more than having an elite wide receiver and all this other stuff. The issue is the volatility is insane, where you just have a guy play lights out all year, and then the next year he's bottom 5. And you see that with a few guys. You're seeing that with JC Horn, who absolutely stinks this year. We've been picking on him for a few weeks now. So the cornerback matchup's nice. The schematic matchup is pretty brutal. It's the coverage cell he'll see the most of is his worst, and it's Keenan's best. But I mean, he's clearly the wide receiver 1, I think, based on last week's usage. And so he could get there. It's just, I think there's better spots than to be targeting unstacked Bears receivers. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he has 2 touchdowns in a fuck you revenge game.
Yeah. I think they're both very much in play. I guess DJ Moore would be the one that I lean into more of the Bears receivers. I'll definitely have some DJ Moore. What was the ownership there? Is he? I feel like I'm missing him up here somewhere. There he is, 3%. So yeah, I'll be above 3%. I think on DJ Moore. Just a great matchup with Carolina. The receiver that I think I am galaxy braining the most this week is Keon Coleman. We talked about the Josh Allen stuff, but Keon Coleman, I think his numbers are sort of skewed by the game where he was benched in the first quarter for tardiness. Now gets at least theoretical kind of a pass funnel. Hasn't really been a pass funnel, but secondary for the Texans that I think is exploitable, and no Khalil Shakir, and he's 4,700. Hasn't really done much this year to make me really excited to play Keon Coleman, but I don't know. It's just one of those, like, I think I might take a shot on it. I don't have this is definitely going to hit, but 4,700, pretty interesting to me against the Texans with no Shakir. Am I galaxy braining too much?
I don't really like the player that much, but I've said this ever since he was drafted. Is like, he just strikes me as a guy who isn't going to go over 60 yards very often, but he might have more 2 touchdown games than 60-yard games, and so I could see him getting, 60 yards and 2 touchdowns this week, or in a good week for him.
What about Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel, then? Any other Bills receivers?
No, like I said, I needed to dig into that, but my lean was just to kind of dock Allen without Shakir, and then also maybe boost James Cook a little bit.
Okay. Have I run out of wide receivers that I want to talk about? Let's see. I think I've talked about my favorite receivers on the slate. Don't really see anybody jumping out to me as must talk about. We talked about Zay Flowers a little bit when we talked about Lamar, but coming in 4% owned seems pretty solid.
Yeah, he's another top. I think it's him and Sutton as 2 of the top XFP values of the week. I think if you're going to play one of the quarterbacks from that game, that's the piece you want on Baltimore side.
Okay, and I think we talked enough about Bo Melton earlier when we were talking about Jordan Love, but obviously we both are pretty into Bo Melton this week as a kind of a dart throw. Not expect to have a ton of ownership. Probably if you got up to 20% ownership, then I would start to be all right, I think I'm going to fade this, but we're projecting Bo Melton for very little ownership, and pretty interesting as a starting receiver on the Packers, who kind of spread the ball around. He's cheap, so into that. Any other wide receivers that you think we need to talk about?
Yeah, again, I wanted to say dangerously bold things about Bo Melton, but Jake wouldn't let me. Just good chance he busts, but just unreal cost adjusted upside at 3,300.
Yep, love that. All right, let's move on and talk about some tight ends right on cue. Chris Ostra says he's excited to hear about tight ends. So let's get into it.
That was actually me. That was my burner, because that's exactly how I feel about tight ends.
You're excited to talk about
for you to talk about them,
because you have no clue what to do with them.
I have no idea what. It's just rough out here. It is rough in these streets.
It is rough out here. I feel like it's generally a bad idea to lean into the chalk at tight end. I'm sort of inclined to do so this week anyway,
right?
Because I like
exactly
that game environment so much with Tucker Kraft, Colby Parkinson,
and Jake Ferguson on FanDuel too.
Yep. Those are my 3 cash options on FanDuel at tight end. They look pretty good. Tucker Kraft just 3,500. His role has been getting better and better every single week. And I can pull up. I have this split by game, but let's just look at week 4 for Tucker Kraft up to. Wait, do I have this split wrong? Oh, I thought I had. Never mind. This is where I want to be. I've moved too many things around here. But Tucker Kraft up to pretty elite usage, 84% rep participation, something like that last week. Saw several targets. Now missing 2 wide receivers on the Packers, 2 starting receivers. Could just have a pretty solid role. Okay, I did not separate this. Shoot. I thought I had already split this up by week and opponent, as Ryan Heath taught me. So we can see a little game log for the Packers. But Tucker Kraft, pretty solid role here in week 4, up to 83.9% rep participation, saw 7 targets, gets a best possible matchup against the Rams. So let's start there. How do you feel about the Tucker Kraft chalk?
Yeah, I don't know what to do here. This is where my brain doesn't work well is like you factor in the ownership, but like if I have my my video with Johnny tomorrow and he's like, bro, Tucker Kraft should be 75%. You just go all in. I'd be overjoyed to hear that, because that makes sense to me. If he tells me, if he's like, dude, you never go all in on the chalk tight end of the week, because the chalk tight end of the week always fails. And I'm like, all right, then I'll have to, I don't know. Just to me, like, clearly far and away the best tight end you could feel good about this week. Massive spike in usage last week. You removed 2 wide receivers from the equation, 9 targets last week, second most on the team. But again, chalk tight end of the week never hits. So
it can hit. It can hit. You're allowed to play Tucker Kraft, but let's try and find some others also. I think 26%. I mean, honestly, probably the cash game tight end for me is Tucker Kraft. I think I'm still going to have at least I'll probably have 20% in tournaments. I'm not getting away from it too much. Just the value is too good. The matchup too good to fully fade. I think Colby Parkinson also looks really good. He's just 3,700. He has the second highest ownership here. Also has just a phenomenal role. I'll pull up the Rams here so we can see his role.
He has a phenomenal role, but like, has he scored 9 fantasy points once this year? I don't think he has. So he kind of feels like a cash tight end to me, where like the like fading him doesn't scare me as much as Kraft.
Okay, well that's a good way to differentiate a little bit. So maybe.
But he's for sure, like here's the thing, like he's for sure the second best point per dollar tight end of the week. But it's like he doesn't strike fear into my heart at all.
We have no Evan. It looks like things are trending toward no Evan Ingram again this week. Brenton Strange is 3,200. I did think that his role last week was not quite as good as it had been in previous weeks, as I recall. Let me look. Yeah, down to 45%. So we had been 67% in week 2, 58% in week 3, down to 46% rep participation last week. Saw 3 targets. So went from 7 to 5 to 3 targets. The role seems to be diminishing a little bit. I think Luke Farrell has gotten a little bit of a better role each week. Yeah, he's up to 20% rep participation. So I don't know. Do you have any interest in playing some Brenton Strange? He still has, in total 15 targets in his 3 starts with no Evan Ingram. I'm a little bit scared off by the usage from last week, but maybe that was just a blip. Maybe he's still good. How do you feel about Brenton Strange?
Yeah, over the last 3 weeks, he leads all tight ends in air yards, ranks 6th in XFP per game. It's a top 3 matchup on paper. It's also a great schematic matchup for him. Well, like very small sample, so you can't really trust this too much, but he's going to see a ton of cover 3, where 3.41 yards per route run, team high 35% target share against cover 3. So it looks like a really good spot for him. Only 3,200. Yeah, I think he's a really good value, but you're right to bring up the decline in usage. It's still just like for a 3,200 guy, that's fine.
Yeah, still in play. You don't usually.
I think BTJ goes off. The schematic matchup works in his favor too, but
yeah. You're kind of seeing it with the ownership here, but outside of Kraft and Parkinson, maybe Strange to a lesser extent, it is kind of the pay up options that I have the most interest in. Like I think the way that Tucker Kraft fails is he puts up 7 fantasy. I mean, he doesn't no guarantee he puts up 7, but like pretty good chance that he gets like 7 fantasy points. And then I think somebody of the George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers tier could just fully separate where you need one of those. So that would be, to me, if you're getting away from the chalky cheap tight ends, I think I'd be more inclined to go to just the pay up options who have the ability to actually break a slate. We have Trey McBride now questionable. That's not great. Downgrade to questionable.
What about Fred Warner for that game? Because that's key.
Fred Warner?
Yeah, I think he's still questionable.
Okay.
That's huge. That's that. So like if he plays and Fred Warner's out, that's huge for him.
Yeah.
Elijah Higgins, I mean, he would be in play. I was all over him last week, and that did nothing for us. But he had an 85% route share.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Would you play him even if Fred Warner is in? Elijah Higgins. If
Probably not.
Trey McBride is out, okay. Just wanted to. But I mean, George Kittle against Arizona, I mean, seems pretty good to me at 5,600. I have a lot of interest in George Kittle.
So
with that.
Every time we do this video, I'm going to bring up George Kittle as an amazing GPP play. He leads all tight ends in fantasy points per game right now, ranks second in XFP per game. Here's the crazy stat. Over his last 12 games, he averages 22.2 DK fantasy points per game in the top 50% of those games. You can contrast that to like plenty of wide receiver ones, like DK Metcalf averages only 19.9 in his top 50% of games. So unreal upside for like an otherwise dead position. His price, 5,600, is equivalent to the wide receiver 26. The only issue is we really do have like the best injury guy at fantasy points. The most famous NFL bettor of all time. The dude went on Joe Rogan's show a couple months ago, but he only gave 2 shout outs in his autobiography. One was to Dr. Chow, and then the other was to Edwin, as like 2 must follow Twitter accounts who have made them a lot of money over the years. And so anyway, he's really good. And he thinks Kittle's going to play, but he's going to be limited, maybe not get his typical snap count. And so that's the concern, but still, again, unique upside, which is so important and scarce and valuable at the tight end position.
Kincaid, I mean, again, no Khalil Shakir. Kincaid is actually, his role, looked like it was pretty bad a few weeks ago, but he did miss some time with a concussion. Was back to a pretty great role last week. The target share has been there for Kincaid. Now no Khalil Shakir. Maybe they just lean into Kincaid a little bit more.
He actually had, he had 7 targets, but he had a 58% route share. That's not great. I don't know, dude. He's not a guy who
Kincaid.
He doesn't fear me. He doesn't strike fear into my heart fading him. And he's been so underwhelming this year. And I don't know that the price has come down enough.
The targets have been there though. He is getting really solid number of targets week over week. I guess I can pull that up.
Has he?
Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty consistently getting. I mean, for a team that nobody gets a ton of targets, at least he's been
right. It's like they spread it around so much, and Shakir has been seeing more. I know.
7 last week though for Kincaid, so his best target share yet, 22.6%. I mean, he had the one.
Yeah, but someone's in chat saying Eric All has seen 4 targets in 3 straight games. And what does Kincaid average over the last 3 this season? What does he average this season? Is it 4 targets per game?
Let's see. He has 8, 13, 17 on the year for Kincaid. So yeah, not great. Just over 4 per game. Did miss some time with the concussion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I think this is like a philosophical thing. You're like, well, I want to be paying up, and I'm thinking the opposite is like, the tight end position just sucks so much ass this year. Why not just go all the way down to, well, again, just play Tucker Kraft, but if not, go all the way down to a Theo Johnson, no Malik Neighbors.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Seattle's been getting beat up by tight ends, or you could play Eric All, Debro's boy.
Yeah.
I love the player. It's just the dude's like barely the tight end 2 in a 3-way committee. You could play, I think Komet's kind of like an interesting off the wall play, just because his snap share jumped up to 93%. He started off the season at like 43%. It's just like steadily climbed. And then he had that monster game 2 weeks ago. Even if it was without Keenan, it's just like, has any other tight end flashed as much upside this year? So I don't know. It's just, like I said, tight end's tough this week, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up. I like this particularly for looking at tight ends. Which teams do sneakily well against tight ends?
So let me just say something about this tool. Like, this is for sure one of the most valuable tools that exist. It's just one, it gets better with a larger sample size. 2, tight end position. 2, it only really matters at the polar extreme. If you're looking at like two players who have tied. One has like the 13th best matchup. One has the 13th worst matchup. Doesn't really matter all that much. Polar extremes, though, it matters a ton. And then the other is tight end matchups, just historically don't really matter all that much. But at the polar extremes, sure they do.
Yeah. And here we have, I mean, Seattle continues to be a nice spot. That somebody was asking about, is Seattle still a tight end funnel? And looks like top 5 so far this year in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. So that's notable. Green Bay also. So if you're wanting to play some Parkinson, does look like a pretty solid matchup there. But yeah, it's obviously, this is not the number one thing you should be using to determine who you want to play, but worth looking at the very least. All right. Any others? I like the Cole Kmet shout out. That's pretty interesting. Brock Bowers, I don't know, 5,500. No Devontae Adams. Didn't work out last week. Has not really worked out. You know, I thought he was going to crush Carolina. That didn't happen. He's been pretty disappointing, but still think the talent is there for Brock Bowers. I don't know. One of these weeks feels like it could work out. How do you think about Brock Bowers this week?
Well, I loved Bowers last week, and Heath was, whispering in my ear, like, no, it's the worst possible schematic matchup. Don't play him. And then he flopped. And like, the only thing I can think of he was right. And, it's another just identical bad schematic matchup, but it's also generational talent. Dude is good at ball. He should be getting like 5 screens per game, especially with Adams out. 77% route share. I was kind of hoping for 95 without Mayer. Which is weird, but why is Mayer still out with a personal thing? Are they gonna ship Adams, Mayer, and Max to the Commanders, who are then gonna win the NFC this year? I don't know.
For like just draft picks, you think?
I don't know. It's been in the back of my head all day. That would be so sick if that happened.
That would be so fun. Yeah.
For my 100% Jaden Daniels exposure.
Yeah. Kind of feels like I'd have interest in one of these Baltimore tight ends.
Bro, Mark Andrews at 4K. Wild.
Yeah, he's just been so bad. He's just
I don't think you could at 1% 4K. I don't think you can play him. He had 4 routes last week. I had a tweet where it's like, here are all the players with more routes run over the last 2 weeks, and there's literally multiple players whose names I've never heard of. Mason Tipton is one. Do you know who Mason Tipton is, Neil?
No.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull this tweet up.
Andrews, 4 routes in week 3, 6 routes in week 4.
Do you know who Blake Whiteheart is?
No.
Do you know who DJ Turner is?
Ooh. That sounds familiar, but
you're probably thinking of the defensive player, DJ.
You're right.
Turner.
You're right.
Actually, an offensive DJ. Simi Fehoko.
Was he on the Bengals? I know the name.
He started his career with the Cowboys.
That's right.
2 Eagles tight ends who aren't Dallas Goedert, Amir Abdullah.
Alcantara.
It's so gross, bro.
Yeah, it's not great. Might be just completely over for Mark Andrews. The coach speak is still like, oh, there's going to be different games. We're going to use different packages, use different personnel. Andrews will have his weeks. I don't know if I buy it.
And I have no explanation for this. Like, people like on Discord, they're asking us like, what's going on with Andrew? I have no, it's not logical. He must be hurt. That's my only explanation.
Yeah, it's just the coaches I guess new coaching staff just didn't come in, doesn't realize that Mark Andrews was a star. Like, has been a star for years.
It's the same coaching staff as last year. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great there for Mark Andrews these days. What about Isaiah Likely?
No, because look at what they did last week, and it's like they're just not using any of these guys. Likely had 10 routes. Andrews had 6. Charlie Kolar had 3. It's what?
Yeah, you're right. I was thinking of the other Harbaugh being a new coach,
and that was the nuts matchup last week. That was the spot. I mean, to be fair, they only threw the ball like 12 times, but
yeah, I don't know. Hard to get there. Probably not getting there this week. Any other tight ends to talk about? Noah Fant.
Maybe Njoku if he plays. I gotta dig into
that's a good call. Yeah, if Njoku plays,
like
something to consider. All right, let's build some lineups. And anything else we need to talk about before building lineups? Do you have any defensive thoughts or anything? What are you thinking?
Whatever you want to do.
Let's just build some lineups.
Let's
We're already hour 45 in. I bet you have to piss right now. Do you want to lead the first one?
Yeah, no, it's. Do you want this one to be the Flacco double or the next one to be a Flacco double?
Let's make a Flacco double.
All right.
I assume Pittman and Downs.
Yeah, I wonder if we see more Mitchell, just because Alec Pierce was Anthony Richardson's boy. Because like the only thing either of them do well is the deep ball, and Richardson wore a Alec Pierce shirt to the game in week 2.
He did.
But I don't think you could play him, even though he is the ass god. And there you go. That's nice and easy. We can pay up at running back, so we can do Mason, Kyron, Henry.
Yeah, let's go. I like Kyron. Can we afford Henry too? I guess we're probably paying down at tight end. So yeah, now we can go.
We also do Jacobs because we don't have a. Or do you want to just throw Wicks on here?
Well, let's see what we can do. If we play, do we want to go with one of the chalk tight ends? Just go with Tucker Kraft, or do you want to do something else?
Oh, right. Okay, well, let's see what it looks like with Kraft.
Okay. So no, yeah, we should. I mean, if we do, Wicks will still have 3,600 left over for defense.
Well, put Panthers in and see what happens.
Okay.
I always like to start off with the cheapest one just to see.
All right, so then we would have 6,200 left for flex. Could be Amari Cooper, Chuba Hubbard, McLaurin.
Deontay. Oh, did we even talk Deontay? Or
we didn't
was
talk
that just
Deontay.
too obvious?
We did not talk at all about Deontay. Yeah.
Well, that's
do you
silly.
want to touch on
yeah,
that?
dude, I just freaking love Deontay.
He's just been targeted 27 times in 2 games with Andy Dalton.
He's going to be one of my highest owned wide receivers of the week. I love him. He should be, I don't know, 1,200 more.
All right. So yeah, we skipped over him in the wide receiver portion. Good to bring him up here. Would you want to do that, or we could go a little bit cheaper and get some defense that's better than the Panthers potentially?
I kind of like the Kyron Kraft Wicks mini stack within the Flacco stack.
Okay, Kyron Kraft, throw Wicks in here, and then we can upgrade somewhere else.
Yeah.
There we go. So now we have 1,200 left over. Could upgrade at. I mean, running back, we're already paying up for Kyron and Derrick Henry. We could obviously upgrade our defense a little bit. We could play anybody except for the Niners at defense. Trying to see if we have any obvious correlations. Not really.
Yeah, I don't know.
Seahawks against Dimes. Broncos defense is going to look pretty good against Vegas. Yeah,
I don't know. Hit Panthers and see if we want to pay up for Kittle or whoever.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have 4,700 left. That's kind of, I think, in no man's land. Yeah, and we could throw Komet in there. Yeah, kind of an awkward range here. What else do we have at running back?
Someone brought up Deontay's tough matchup. I'd say, yeah, it's tough. It's like not prohibitive. It's like fringe bottom 10, but really just Dalton's locking onto him. He's an all-time ass god. He looks great. Dalton looks great. Volume's insane. I just think he's an amazing play.
Put Tucker Kraft back in there because I couldn't find any other tight ends to pay up for that's 4,700 or less. So we could upgrade Wicks, but I don't know.
What about switch Kyron to Jacobs, take out Wicks, take out Kraft?
Wait, or we could just take out Flacco and make this a double Green Bay stack.
Oh, all right. But then we got to build a Flacco double.
That's true. Then we have to do a separate Flacco double. So maybe we take Wicks out of this one. Just upgrade Wicks somewhere else.
Can you try my thing first?
Okay, sorry. Say it again.
Take out Kraft.
Yep.
Take out Kyron.
Got it.
Replace him with Jacobs.
Okay.
Maybe play Packers defense
Love that.
for all the leverage. And now you see what we could do.
Okay. So now we have I also took out
Throw in
Wicks.
Theo Johnson or whoever, and we'll just see what. Oh, I guess we don't even need that. We're gonna have like 9,000 left over.
Yeah, we still do
Okay.
Kraft and then Kenneth Walker, Debo Samuel.
Oh yeah. Well, whatever you want. Those guys are great.
Yeah. Let's go
Kenneth.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say we could also just here's where we could put Wicks in the flex and pay up. I think at tight end would have been another option.
No, I like this.
Okay.
This is strong.
Yep, this works for me. So we got the Joe Flacco double with Pittman and Downs. We have Brian Thomas Jr. bring back. We have Kraft and Jacobs from Green Bay along with the Packers defense. Kenneth Walker, Derrick Henry filling it out. Solid lineup. All right, so there is our Flacco lineup, and then you also wanted to do a Jordan Love lineup.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. Jordan Love, I assume Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks are your favorite?
Love Wicks. And then you could do Kraft, Melton, Reed. I want to do one without Reed though. Just to have fun. You could do whatever you want from here with the stack. But.
All right, we'll do this one without Reed. So let's throw Melton in there.
Okay. Do you want to bring back? Do you want Kyron, Atwell?
Yeah, we could do. Let's do 2-2.
All right, and then we could just really spend up.
Yeah. So now we have a lot of money to spend. We could do.
What about adding Kraft? Is that like too much, or does that just?
No, I think that's fine. I think if you look at like sim results, sims are really into the triple stack this week. So I think this works out just fine. Now we have 6,700 left. Now we could do a pay up running back with a pay up defense potentially if we want to go Jordan Mason and the Niners potentially.
Yeah, I like it. Well, I what about Henry and Ravens? Is that too expensive?
No, it's actually less expensive. I mean, we could do both of those if we wanted to. Do you prefer the Ravens defense against Cincinnati?
Well, let's see what we could do in the flex right now.
Yeah, so the flex, and we can play anybody other than Jamar Chase right now. If we did switch this to the Ravens, we'd be able to.
Yeah, let's do that. But you're not going to play the Ravens against Chase.
Good point. Yeah.
All right, just click it and see what happens.
Now we have 8,500 left over. We could switch off Mason too if you don't love Jordan Mason.
For Kyron?
Yeah, I mean we have all the money you could possibly want right now.
The problem is I don't know who to pay up for, especially at wide receiver.
Yeah.
You want to just throw Kyron in here?
Yep. Okay, we got Kyron in there. Now we have 900 left over.
All right, take out Atwell.
Okay. JSN.
I would click BTJ and find a way to make it work.
Okay, so we need 100 more. Take out the Ravens. Go back to we go to the Broncos or Patriots.
Yeah. Who do our projections like more? I guess the Broncos.
Broncos, top projected defense. They are the chalkiest also.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, let's do it. Easy peasy. We got Jordan Love in there with Bo Melton and Dontavian Wicks and Tucker Kraft. So a triple stack. We have Kyron on the bring back there. Jordan Mason, Derrick Henry paying up at the running back position. Brian Thomas Jr. in there as a one-off. Yeah, looks like it, and the Broncos defense leaves just 100 on the table. Solid lineup. All right, so we've done both of your favorite stacks. I did want to force you to make one Josh Allen lineup.
Okay.
So let's just try. Let's see what it could look like. Just because I think it's an interesting one. Not a lot of people do it. I want to do a double stack with Kincaid and Keon Coleman. Do you prefer Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs? Are you there? He's not there. Okay, we lost Scott. So I will continue building with a line in the middle of my face. And I'm going to go with, probably just go with Nico Collins. He's only, I'll put him in there for now. Maybe I'll switch out later to Stephon Diggs. All right, let's go running backs here. So because we paid up quite a bit, I'm going to go to Tyrone Tracy in this one. We've done a lot of Kyron. I do really like Kyron, but maybe I'll go somewhere different. Man, this is a pretty easy slate as far as pricing goes. Could go back to Kyron, Kenneth Walker. I like Josh Jacobs. We haven't done a ton of Jacobs. This one we're leaning away from Green Bay's passing game, so I think Jacobs makes sense as a leverage on all the chalk going to Green Bay receivers. All right, other receivers. Could go back to Brian Thomas. Could still play Reed, even though we went to Jacobs. I think I'd be less inclined to. Maybe go to Debo in this one. All right, so now go to a cheaper defense. I'll go with Green Bay defense. Again, we didn't go to any Rams. Let's go to Green Bay defense. Now we have 4,100 left over in the flex. Some pretty solid options here. Trey Tucker's there. He's not my favorite pay down option.
Testing.
There he is. What's going on?
This is torture. I'm being held against I lost audio. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything or speak. All I saw was just this lineup that I have no control over.
I was just trying to get the whole thing done before he came back. That was kind of my goal, just to like get this lineup done. Scott can't come in and stop me from building my lineup.
A Josh Allen. My goodness.
How long until Neil acknowledges Scott? Yeah, I wasn't looking at you. I was just looking at my lineup. All right. Let's see.
I can't wait for this to win $1 million and then get 50% of it.
Yeah. Caleb McLean says, "Oof, fellas, this one's tough." Next, we'll see. We'll see about that. I mean, it's not. I wanted to try something different here with Josh Allen. It's not necessarily my. I think it's a solid large field tournament lineup. Josh Allen double stack. Nobody's doing it. We got the bring back with Nico Collins. Oh, here's what we can do. I can take out. Wait, can I take out Nico? No, I think I'd be 100 short if I take out Nico, and then I'd be 100 short of getting to Wicks there if I switch this out to Diggs. But I could, let's see. Then I could just pay for $100 cheaper, go to the Broncos defense again. There you go. I'm just going to enter this one. And then do you want to build one more, Scott?
Yeah. Why don't we crowdsource one of them?
All right. Since apparently Caleb hated that one.
One thing I'll say is I have a lot of every week there's going to be like a quarterback or a wide receiver who's like 2 to 6% who I mention. And I'm like, oh, I really like him. He's not high on my board, but I like him, and like him more than all those freaking inside the box DFS shows everyone else is listening to. But he's just like not high enough on my board. Yeah. But like I went out of my way to talk about him or write him up. And so like I think that's a good way to start off, especially for like a millie maker sort of lineup, which I don't typically play a lot of millies.
Yeah.
So for you, Neil, if there was anyone like that who you're like, he's maybe not high on my board either, but he was interesting, I think that would be a good person to shout out.
Josh Allen. I mean, that's what the Josh Allen lineup was, just not getting any ownership. And like, you can clearly see Josh Allen putting up a 35 burger and probably going to drag some.
All right. Well, I'm not drafting another Josh Allen team. So we're going to crowdsource this. What up, chat? Give us a quarterback. Not a chalky one.
Caleb, pretty low owned. I would say he kind of fits that bill for me. Something that, I mean, Deshaun Watson, I know you hate it, is somebody that I'll play some of.
Let me take a look. Let about
Let me refresh, see if we have. Who are you thinking?
What about a Geno single? I don't. Or we could do a Purdy.
I do like me some Purdy. Okay, Joe Flacco's still at 2% here. Yeah, we could do a Purdy lineup.
It would either be. No, let's do Geno, Walker, Metcalf, and we'll pretend this is. And we'll pretend this is like a red zone entry.
We did have Walker was actually targeted like 5 times last week or something like that. So not somebody who's usually getting a ton of passing game usage, but can obviously break one.
Yeah, I mean, Giants probably don't show up, but what if, it's 3rd and 10 on the first drive of the game, Metcalf houses it, and then Walker picks up 2 scores, and then, I don't know, Metcalf gets another touchdown. I can see it.
I'm enjoying Jake Tribby freaking out in chat about Scott not being here. He's relieved to see you back. I think he thought he's like a dog. Like if you disappear from his view, he thinks like, where did he go? I have no idea. Where did Scott go? Is he gone? Scott still here? No, Scott is back. Okay, we've got the. Do you want to do a bring back? Do you want to do a Wanda Robinson?
I mean, if you want to play Theo Johnson,
we do Tyron Tracy. Tyron Tracy bring back.
Oh right. Oh duh.
Don't have to.
Your call. I'm okay with it. You're better with correlations than I am.
I mean, we'll be able to do whatever we want with the rest of our lineup if we go there.
Okay.
Let's try it. Mostly because I like the play. I guess we have 5,200 left, so not right, really.
Let's do a Wix BTJ mini.
Yes. I mean, I don't know what the correlation is there, but I like it anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Pittman BTJ.
Oh, Pittman. Okay, yeah, we can do that. I like that. So now we have tight end flex DST.
You want to do Hubbard Panthers D?
Yeah. All right.
And then what? We just can afford whatever we want, or no?
No, we won't be able to, but we will be able to pay for something. Oh, it's just tight end. So let's see. 5,600. Oh, we can pay up for George Kittle, Brock Bowers. Yeah. Beauty. All right.
Nice.
So we've got the Geno Smith with Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf double stack of sorts. Tyrone Tracy is the bring back in that one. We have the mini correlation with Pittman, Brian Thomas Jr., George Kittle one off, and then Chuba Hubbard with Panthers running back defense correlation. Looks good. Use the full salary cap. There we go.
Boom.
4 lineups on stream for this one. All right, Scott, that will do it for this show. Where else can people find you? The rest of Jake says I have 0 object permanence. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Where else can people find you the rest of the weekend? What other content do you have out there?
Yeah, subscribe to Fantasy Points. Use promo code OTB25 for 25% off anything. I would recommend an all-in package or a premium package. You can hang out with me in Discord all tonight, tomorrow morning during the games. You can check out my show with John Proctor tomorrow morning, way too early in the morning. And what about you, Neil?
Yeah, I'll have for the Sunday night football game tomorrow, I'll do a write-up at Fantasy Points. You'll be able to find, if you are a Fantasy Points subscriber tomorrow, just going through the defensive stuff, the usage stats for the Sunday night football game. Yeah, that's where you'll be able, and I'll also do a live before lock show on my own channel tomorrow night for the Sunday night football game. So if you're playing some Showdown, check that out. Have not decided. I would like to do just like a short video for the London game, which is tomorrow morning. I might put that out on my channel if I can find the time today for the Vikings Jets game. It's 8:30 in the morning here Central Time, so I'd have to find time today. I still have to write my write up for the Sunday football game, so no promises, but I'm hoping to be able to do something for the morning game also. But yeah, my stuff, my Sunday night football stuff will be at Fantasy Points, the write up tomorrow. All right, that will do it for this show. Over 2 hours this week. We were so good last week. We kind of brought it back in, reined it in a little bit, did a shorter slate. Now this one we get 10 games and we still took over 2 hours, but it was a lot of fun as always. Love talking through these slates with the GOAT, Scott Barrett. Love all of you guys for hanging out with us while we do these shows. I know a lot of people watch after the fact. Please do like the video, comment if you have anything to say, subscribe to the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. All that stuff helps. Appreciate you guys, and we will catch you next week.
What? What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.